Monday, the 29th of January 1979. The quiet suburban streets of San Carlos, San Diego, were filled with the usual sounds of a new week beginning. Children laughed and chatted as they gathered outside the gates of Grover Cleveland Elementary School, waiting for the bells to signal the start of another day of learning. But across the street, in a house cluttered with empty bottles and shadows, a 16-year-old girl named Brenda Ann Spencer was watching them through a telescopic sight. She wasn't preparing for class, she was preparing for a massacre. With a single squeeze of a trigger, she would shatter the peace of her community and utter a phrase that would haunt the world for decades to come. Before we dive deeper into this chilling case, remember to comment, like, share, and subscribe so you don't miss future episodes of the Calendar of Crime. Your support helps us continue bringing these dark chapters of history to light. Brenda Ann Spencer was not your typical teenager, though to many, she seemed like just another troubled soul in a fractured home. Born on April 3, 1962, her early years were marked by the slow disintegration of her parents' marriage. By the time she was a teenager, her mother, Dorothy, had moved out, leaving Brenda in the sole custody of her father, Wallace Spencer. Their home on Lake Atlan Avenue was a place of profound dysfunction. Neighbors recalled a house that was perpetually dark, with windows covered and a general air of neglect. Inside, the situation was even more dire. Brenda didn't have a bedroom of her own. Instead, she slept on a mattress on the living room floor, sharing the space with her father. The house was reportedly littered with empty alcohol bottles, a physical manifestation of the alcoholism that gripped the household. Those who knew Brenda during her time at Patrick Henry High School described a girl who was drifting further and further away from the mainstream. She was known for her bright red hair and a penchant for wearing large aviator-style glasses, but behind that distinctive look was a deeply troubled individual. She struggled with chronic truancy, often skipping classes to wander the neighborhood or engage in petty thefts. Her teachers noted her intelligence but also her lack of engagement, a common trait among children suffering from severe domestic neglect. Perhaps most disturbing was her growing obsession with violence and firearms. She would often talk about doing something big to get on television, a chilling foreshadowing of the events that were to come. Her father, rather than seeking help for his daughter's escalating issues, seemed to enable them, creating an environment where a deadly obsession could flourish. The Christmas of 1978 should have been a time of celebration, a moment of connection in an otherwise isolated existence. Brenda had asked her father for a radio, a modest request for a girl who found a rare sense of peace in the melodies of the era. However, Wallace Spencer had a different gift in mind. On Christmas morning, he presented his 16-year-old daughter with a Ruger 10/22 semi-automatic rifle, equipped with a telescopic sight and 500 rounds of ammunition. It was a gift that defied logic and safety, especially given Brenda's history of mental instability and her previous brushes with the law. Brenda would later recount this moment with a chilling perspective, suggesting that she believed her father bought her the gun because he wanted her to use it on herself. She felt it was a subtle invitation to end her own life, a way for him to be rid of the burden she had become. But as the new year dawned and the first month of 1979 drew to a close, Brenda's thoughts turned outward rather than inward. She spent the weeks leading up to the shooting practicing her aim, often shooting at birds or windows in the neighborhood. No one seemed to notice, or perhaps they were too accustomed to the oddities of the Spencer household to intervene. On the morning of Monday, January 29th, the air was unusually cool for San Diego. Brenda woke up, but she didn't prepare for school. Instead, she took her Ruger 10/22 and moved to the front window of her home. From this vantage point, she had a clear, unobstructed view of the entrance to Grover Cleveland Elementary School. She rested the barrel on the windowsill, adjusted the telescopic sight, and waited. She watched as the yellow school buses arrived and the first groups of children began to gather, unaware that they were being watched through the crosshairs of a rifle. As the children began to cluster near the entrance, the first shots rang out. At first, many thought it was the sound of firecrackers or a car backfiring. But then the screaming started. Children began to fall, their small bodies struck by the .22 caliber rounds. Panic erupted as teachers and staff scrambled to get the students to safety. Principal Burton Wragg, a man known for his dedication to his students, didn't hesitate. He ran toward the gunfire, hoping to pull children out of the line of fire. He was struck in the chest and collapsed. Seeing the principal fall, the school's custodian, Mike Suchar, rushed to his side to offer aid. He, too, was targeted by the sniper across the street. Suchar was hit and fell beside Wragg, both men losing their lives in a selfless attempt to protect the children in their care. The shooting continued for 20 minutes, with Brenda firing round after round into the crowd. In total, 8 children and a responding police officer, Robert Robb, were wounded before the gunfire finally ceased and Brenda retreated further into her home. The San Diego Police Department quickly surrounded the Spencer residence, beginning a tense and terrifying 6-hour standoff. The neighborhood, usually a quiet enclave of suburban life, was transformed into a war zone. SWAT teams took up positions behind parked cars and garden walls, their weapons trained on the small house where Brenda was barricaded. Inside, Brenda seemed almost detached from the chaos she had unleashed. She moved from window to window, occasionally firing shots at the officers who dared to move. The tension was palpable, as the police were unsure if she was alone or if she had hostages. During the height of the standoff, a reporter from the San Diego Union-Tribune, Gus Stevens, managed to find the Spencer's phone number and dialed it on a whim. To his surprise, Brenda answered. In a calm, almost bored voice, she spoke with Stevens for several minutes. When he asked the question that everyone was thinking, why? Why would a 16-year-old girl open fire on innocent children? Brenda gave an answer that would echo through the decades. I don't like Mondays. This livens up the day. She went on to describe how much fun she was having, comparing the shooting to shooting turkeys. It was a statement of pure, nihilistic boredom, a chilling glimpse into a mind that had completely disconnected from the value of human life. This offhand remark would later inspire Bob Geldof of the Boomtown Rats to write the hit song, I Don't Like Mondays, forever cementing Brenda's words in the annals of pop culture and true crime history. Inside the house, Brenda remained defiant, her actions oscillating between periods of eerie silence and sudden bursts of gunfire. Negotiators worked tirelessly, trying to establish a rapport with the girl who seemed so unreachable. They spoke to her through bullhorns and over the phone, trying to understand what had pushed her to this breaking point. Brenda, however, remained elusive, at one point telling negotiators that she would only come out if they brought her a Burger King meal. It was a bizarre request that highlighted the strange mix of childhood innocence and adult violence that defined her. As the hours ticked by, the reality of the situation began to set in. The police were prepared for a long siege, but Brenda's resolve eventually began to crumble. Whether it was the exhaustion of the standoff or the realization of what she had done, she finally agreed to surrender. When she emerged from the house, she was a slight, red-haired girl, her pale skin contrasting with the dark shadows of the doorway. She looked far younger than her 16 years, a child caught in the middle of a nightmare of her own making. As she was led away in handcuffs, she showed no emotion, no sign of the horror she had just inflicted. She left behind a home that was a crime scene and a community that was forever changed. The quiet streets of San Carlos would never feel quite as safe again, and the name Brenda Ann Spencer would become synonymous with a new and terrifying era of American violence. The trial of Brenda Ann Spencer was a media sensation. Because of the severity of her crimes, she was tried as an adult. Her defense team pointed to her troubled upbringing and alleged abuse at the hands of her father, but the jury was moved by the cold-blooded nature of the attack and the lack of remorse she showed. She pleaded guilty to 2 counts of first-degree murder and assault with a deadly weapon. In 1980, she was sentenced to 25 years to life in prison, a sentence she continues to serve to this day. Over the decades, Brenda has appeared before the parole board numerous times, each time seeking a freedom that the families of her victims believe she does not deserve. During these hearings, she has offered various explanations for her actions, ranging from drug use to the aforementioned abuse, but her requests for parole have been consistently denied. The scars she left on the survivors and the families of Burton Wragg and Mike Suchar remain deep, a permanent reminder of a Monday morning that began with laughter and ended in blood. The legacy of that day is not just found in the headlines or the song lyrics, but in the lives of those who were there. The 8 children who were wounded, some of whom carried physical and emotional scars for the rest of their lives became part of a tragic fraternity of school shooting survivors. For many of them, the sound of a car backfiring or a sudden loud noise would forever trigger the memory of that Monday morning. The families of Burton Wragg and Mike Suchar had to navigate a world without their loved ones, men who had died as heroes but whose absence left a void that could never be filled. The community of San Carlos, once a symbol of suburban tranquility, had to grapple with the reality that such violence could happen anywhere, even in their own backyard. The case of Brenda Ann Spencer remains a landmark in the history of American school shootings. It was one of the first instances where a female perpetrator acted alone in such a violent manner, and her motive or lack thereof continues to be a subject of intense psychological study. It serves as a grim reminder of the impact of domestic neglect and the ease with which a troubled mind can access lethal force. As we look back on the events at Grover Cleveland Elementary, we honor the bravery of those who stood in the gap and the resilience of a community that refused to be defined by a single act of evil. Their stories of survival and sacrifice are the true legacy of this dark chapter, a testament to the strength of the human spirit in the face of unimaginable tragedy. Thanks for watching. Please comment, share, like, and subscribe for future episodes from the Calendar of Crime.